everybody, and welcome to another Top 10 edition of Magic Mike's, proudly sponsored by our Patreon supporters and CoolStuffInc.com, where you can find cool stuff in stock every day, and our co-sponsor CardHoarder.com, offering the best inventory, prices, and delivery of cards for Magic Online. I'm Evan Irwin, and we get started each Top 10 by saying hello to my two co-hosts, Aaron Campbell.
Happy Labor Day.
Ruben Bressler.
I'm doing well. A little bit under the weather, but I'm ready to do this episode.
I like how introducing you includes, how you doing, buddy? You going to be all right?
Yeah.
You going to pull through?
Everything's fine.
Every single week, it's like, hey, Aaron, what's up? How's it going? Ruben, are you going to be okay? How are you feeling? Yeah.
Wow. All right. Well, that said, we also begin with our choice of the top comment from last week in a segment we call Honorable Mention, where Ruben will tell us who was the most luxuriant and letting us know what card we did not choose as one of our top 10 zombies. Ruben?
We had some good entries this week. I had some a fun time reading through the comments, but honestly, my favorite came from the Reddit this week. You guys can go to reddit.com/r/magicmikes and leave a comment there. We check all of the social media platforms that tell people we exist. And this week's winner is DJ Kensai. Listening to this podcast, I feel as though you must have all had this hard cast on you, as if it were seeking revenge for being forgotten. How could the most metal discard spell of all time be left off the list? If two different persecutes can make it, I don't see why there's no room for a card that persecutes for all the colors all the time, no thought required. Amnesia should make the top 10 just based on art alone. Your eyes are drawn to the hole in the head, but stay for the dripping brains, drool, and Mark Poole's signature, arranged as an arm tattoo. Amnesia should also be heralded for its simple, concise rules text, as it came out from an age when us magicians could expect no such thing. Don't forget Amnesia.
Wow. Now, note, these are not the top 10 zombies. I messed that up. It's top 10 discard spells. But Amnesia is 3 blue, 3 generic mana for an uncommon sorcery from the Dark, because the Dark didn't really have rares.
The Dark.
Yeah, and it's a source that says target player reveals their hand and discards all non-land cards. So for 6 mana, you get all of them in blue, the discard color.
Right.
That art, too.
And the art is legitimately creepy as all get out. It's been one of the craziest ones. Yeah. But it's like $1.79, so whatever. It's not worth it.
Cool.
Not worth
Yeah,
much.
I used to play it in EDH back in the day.
Yeah. Neat.
Yeah, because I was a very fun person to play Magic against.
Super fun. That's a fun card. That brings the fun lols. Yeah, well, thank you very much, DJ Kensai from Reddit. And again, one of our social channels that you can talk about this top 10 list. Leave your honorable mention comment, which ones we did not include. And you too could win a $50 gift certificate to CoolStuffInc.com. Please get in contact with us over one of our social channels, ideally Aaron on Reddit, or Aaron on Twitter, actually, or Reddit. We're on Reddit. We're all good. We do it. But it also means
mail them to our house.
Just, whatever.
Signals, carrier pigeons. We're flexible.
Well, look, this week is top 10 dragons, and there's only so many dragons to go around.
Yep, there are 188 at present.
So
I was really
not a big list.
I was really surprised by how wide the gulf was in terms of like the good ones and the bad ones, and like that people like to say that dragons and angels are largely casual cards because dragons all seem to be going for some amount of money, but yet they don't really tend to not see competitive play like other tribes do. And so going through this gatherer list, I was kind of reminded of that, and just the ones that were really good were super good, format defining, and the ones that weren't really aren't.
Yeah, they're pretty bad. And note, there's not necessarily, and at least for my list, it wasn't necessarily the type line being always dragon, and we'll get to that. Actually, we'll do that right now as we get to our number 10.
Ooh.
My number 10 is close, but no cigar on the type line. Because what card is more dragon? What card says dragon to you than the one that turns you into a dragon?
Oh, okay.
Form of the Dragon is my number 10.
Oh,
it is a rare from Scourge. It is a 3 red, 4 generic mana, rare enchantment that at the beginning of your upkeep, Form of the Dragon deals 5 damage to target creature or player. At the end of each turn, your life total becomes 5, and creatures without flying can't attack you. So you become a flying dragon that shoots fire every turn. Yeah. That's sick. That's one of the best dragon cards right there. You are the dragon.
I'll allow it.
Yeah, that's a great one. I love that. I think that Form of the Dragon was the main win condition in the old Enduring Ideal decks.
Oh, geez.
And so you would go get your Solitary Confinement. You'd go get, whatever other enchantments you needed, get a permanent off the board with something or other, and then finally end the game on turn, the third or fourth thing you go get with Form of the Dragon.
Wasn't there sorry.
Just definitely a very cool card. I've definitely searched up my fair share with Enduring Ideal in the past as well.
Wasn't there a version made recently, maybe in like one of the Tarkir blocks?
Yes.
Form of the Dinosaur showed up in Rivals of Ixalan, where you became your life total is 15, and at the beginning of your upkeep, deals 15 damage to target creature an opponent controls, and that deals that much damage to you. So you just keep fighting things.
It fights you, and it also doesn't have flying. So Form of the Dragon, much better. There's also Form of the Squirrel from Unglued, which turned you into a 1/1 with Shroud.
I didn't know that.
I think you couldn't be attacked.
I think so.
Also, like, you just hid in a tree. You couldn't do anything. But yeah, that's a great entry. I like that one.
Fair enough. All right. So, and I won't have any entries for a while because we're in the hire fest here. We got fields full of hires. Even Aaron has one.
I have one hire.
That's telling you how often that happens.
Yeah. So I'll see you again at number 7. Meanwhile, Ruben, you got a number 10?
I have a number 10.
Okay.
And while it's difficult to put out the stats for the dragons because most of the dragons don't have good stats for what I'm looking for a top 10. To put that in perspective, all the discard spells either ticked off 3 or 4 of the things I look for. None of the dragons ticked off 3 things. None of them. They maximum ticked off 2, which is hilarious. But there is only one dragon in the history of Magic that has ever been a part of the banned and restricted list. Aaron, my number 10 is World Gorger Dragon.
Nice.
My God.
So World Gorger Dragon is a 3 colorless red Nightmare Dragon. Creature type Nightmare, interestingly. Thanks, Wedge. From the Judgment expansion. It is a 7/7 with flying and trample. When World Gorger Dragon comes into play, remove all other permanents you control from the game, and when it leaves play, return the removed cards to play under their owner's control. On January 15th, 2015, it was removed from the banned list with the sentence, World Gorger Dragon has a strange and powerful interaction with Animate Dead. This used to be too powerful for Legacy. It's not clear that this is more powerful than animating Gristlebrand, and this interaction may add an interesting variant. World Gorger Dragon is no longer banned. It did not add an interesting variant, unfortunately. People tried it out, but the old World Gorger Dragon combo with Animate Dead and things like Piranha Marsh, for example, just, didn't cut the mustard. And but there was a while there where it was super scary, super powerful. Certainly people have played bizarre Baghdad decks in Vintage in the past that weren't Dredge, and one of them was the old World Gorger Dragon combo. Just thought it was worth, being on the list because it's the only one that's ever been removed from competitive play for a period of time.
Yeah, I will have a special place in my heart for this card for as long as I live. I love to tell the story about how when I was recording the Girlfriend Bracket, we were in the Community Super League and we were doing the theme week and you had to choose a tribe, and Wedge had chosen Nightmares, and we were just imagining the horse, like you do, maybe something involving Chainer, that whole thing. And all of a sudden, we had never seen this combo before. And so all of a sudden, he goes Alter the Brood, and we're like, well, that's cute. Okay. Right. And then all of a sudden it happens, and we were just like, oh no. And the way that the Super Leagues work is you have Athena in your ear as the producer. So the rest of the stream can't hear her, but you can. And so we all are like, we want to get off the ride. Like, we're on the roller coaster. It's about to go down. We want off the ride. And Athena's like, you got to show them how it works. You got to show how it works. At least show them how the loop goes. And we're all just dying inside. And you've got Athena going, you got to stay. You got to stay. You can't concede. and luckily, chat was very much on our side. And chat was like, this is terrible. How could you? And Wedge got a lot of boos and a lot of heckling for this sort of combo. And so every time I look at a World Gorger Dragon, I just think of that combo and Athena going, I can't scoop. But I'm like, we want to scoop.
I want to go home.
I mean, fun fact, the original artwork for World Gorger Dragon is currently in the conference room of CoolStuffInc.com.
Really?
Here in Orlando, Florida. That's
wow.
right.
Wow,
the actual
that's
original
awesome.
artwork. Yeah, which is really cool. So one of the owners is a big collector of magic art and has a whole bunch of pieces, and this is one up on the walls, and it's really cool.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's nice. So Aaron, what's your number 10?
My number 10 was pretty easy for me. I wanted to keep it kind of flavorful. Most of the dragons that we see are sort of the fully grown versions, but a lot of people don't know that dragons don't just come out that way. Like dragons do mate and they do reproduce and they do, they do spawn, and there are little baby dragons, and eventually those dragons grow up to be the big dragons, which I'm sure are going to populate most of our lists. But I had to give credit to where it all starts. I mean, my number 10 is Dragon Egg. So Dragon Egg is 2 and a red. It's a creature type dragon egg. It's a 0/2 at defender. It says this creature can't attack. When Dragon Egg dies, create a 2/2 red dragon creature token with flying. And 1 red, this creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn, also known as fire breathing. That's what that ability tends to do. And so, but this is where it starts. And, the flavor of sort of you crack the egg and the little baby dragon whelp comes out. And so I thought if we're going to talk about dragons, most of them being fully formed, we should kind of talk about where they start. And they usually start as little dragon eggs.
Oh yeah, and I mean this is back in Core Set 2019. I love this thing in limited. It's absolutely amazing for what it's worth. Like to get a little fire breather for almost nothing is terrific. I was very close to including this myself just because again, like how powerful this is, and it kind of blows my mind. It wasn't around until Magic 2014.
Yeah. It triggers your Dragon Horde twice, once on the front end, and then once the hatchling opens and makes a dragon whelp. It's also the first creature to be printed with the creature type egg. There had been eggs printed previously. None of them were printed as eggs. Rock Egg is the most popular recent example from 2012. It's just a bird. Ruck Egg was banned again in one format or another for a while, originally from Arabian Nights. It was also just a bird. There was Summoner's Egg, and apparently Ludovic's Test Subject is also an egg now.
Yeah.
I mean, Rook Egg was creature type egg back in 8th edition.
Was it? It was printed with the creature type egg?
It was Summon Egg in Arabian Nights, but when they reprinted in 8th edition, it was creature-egg. So we've had
they had removed egg from the game for a while because Summoner's Egg is not printed as an egg. So weird. And Ludovic's test Subject's not printed as an egg. So I guess this is the triumphant return of Dragon Egg and the egg creature type.
Whatever. It's fine. That card's sweet, though. Let's move on here to number 9. Obviously, I don't have one. I'll see you guys at number 7. Ruben, do you have a number 9?
I do not have a number 9. I also have many hires, and this is one of them.
I'll handle this.
Aaron, what's your number 9?
So my number 9 is a card that came out recently. And one of the things that I really look for in a lot of my lists is cards that do things a little differently. If you go through Gather and you look up Dragon, you're going to see a lot of big creatures, 4/4s, 5/5s, 6/6s, big. They're probably flying. They probably cost a lot of mana. And so I was specifically looking for dragons that kind of change the game or the way that we think of dragons. And in Core Set 2019, we got to see a dragon that, in addition to having amazing stats, also can flip into something. We've seen things transform like lands, we've seen enchantments transform, but this is the first time we've ever seen a dragon do something like this. And so I had to include this on my list. My number 9 is Nicol Bolas the Ravager. So Nicol Bolas the Ravager is 1, a blue, a black, and a red. It's a legendary creature, Elder Dragon, 4/4, flying. When Nicol Bolas the Ravager enters the battlefield, each opponent discards a card, which is already great. You will take that on a 4/4. And then if you have 4 colorless, a blue, black, and a red, you can exile Nicol Bolas the Ravager, return it to the battlefield transformed as Nicol Bolas the Arisen, which is a planeswalker. Starts off with 4 loyalty.
7
loyalty. 7 loyalty, and has 4 abilities. You can +2 it to draw 2 cards. You can -4 to put a target creature or planeswalker card. Oh, there's 4 abilities. 3. Yeah, -3. Nicol Bolas deals 10 damage to a creature or planeswalker. That's 10 damage. We can -4 put a creature or planeswalker card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control, or -12 to exile all but the bottom card of target player's library. We've just never seen this before. We've never seen a dragon that was so powerful by itself that it also was able to transform, like we've seen cards of different types do. And so this is just a very novel idea, a very novel take on a dragon, and a big card, $30 right now.
It's not a reasonable Magic card. This is not a fair Magic card. No. It's a 2-for-1 at minimum. Yeah. And at best, and it's got just, there's like that, the sweetness they got with the ultimate of just the arrogance of Nicol Bolas, who's like, I'll give you a turn. Go ahead. Right. Good luck. That's beautiful. That's so
really good. It's also the most expensive card in M19 right now by a pretty wide margin.
True.
With a couple of the planeswalkers directly behind it. Yeah, just a really cool card. Obviously, it says each, so if you're playing multiplayer or you're playing Brawl with this as your commander or something along those lines, it's not just a 2-for-1 at minimum. It's at minimum a 4 or 5 or whatever.
Gross.
Yeah, it's pretty absurd.
Yeah, this card is ridiculous and expensive because of how ridiculous it happens to be. And oh yeah, we're going into a multicolor block. Wow, that's weird. We're going to have like awesome mana to always play this thing when you want to.
Right.
This card is crazy.
And the fact that the Grixis mechanics work well together was just a coincidence.
Just so happen, as it were. Foils, you know, just $100, just a tiny $100. Fair enough. All right, so let's move on here to number 8. Once again, we'll see it later. Not me. Ruben, you got a number 8?
I do, and I'm a little surprised this one's actually not higher, although thinking back on it, higher on anyone else's list. But thinking back on it, I think I'm the only one in previous episodes when we had talked about Broodmate Dragon to give it any respect. It may have been in like the top Jund card lists because, you know, there's just not that many, but it's got to be in the top 10 dragons, right? I mean, it's won 2 Pro Tours in 2 different decks. It was a part of dominating strategies all throughout its life cycle, and it's also been reprinted relatively recently in both Commander and Modern Masters 2017. For those of you who don't know what it does, Broodmate Dragon is a 3-colorless black, red, green creature type dragon, 4/4 with flying, but when it enters the battlefield, a Broodmate comes along, and you get a 4/4 red dragon creature token with flying on the battlefield. 8 power, 8 toughness of flying across 2 bodies for the low cost of 6 mana. It was the go-to finisher for Jund, decks like Quick and Toast, which is the old 5-color Vivid Land Reflecting Pool control deck. And yeah, I think it's just been a solid win condition throughout its life cycle. The 5-color control decks could have chosen any win condition that they wanted during the Shards of Alara era because of the mana bases, and they chose Broodmate Dragon.
Well, there's no disrespect here, as it was my number 9.
Well, there we go.
My first hire, we were right there together in that. Not necessarily top 5 material, but there's no doubt that Broodmate is just a force to be reckoned with. This thing is, by the way, this thing is stupid limited. Like, this is, you know, like there's good and limited cards. This card is like dumb. This card is like, you know, it just makes your opponent scoop. You're like, Broodmate, and they go, hold on, I'm busy putting this in the box. Well, it slips over there. Like, the card is absolutely ridiculous, super powerful, was great from the moment it saw print, and yeah, it's hard to say a bad word about Broodmate. She great. Aaron, what's your number 8?
My number 8 is a card that I'm surprised is not more expensive. It's only going for $1 right now. But every time I can't think of an EDH deck I've played that didn't want this. It's just a nice colorless answer that can be played in many different decks. If you're playing any sort of EDH deck that ramps, this is something you definitely don't mind ramping into. And it's a dragon that essentially comes with almost like a Ratchet Bomb or a Pernicious Deed type ability. You know, we've seen many dragons, or we will see many dragons that have the ability to deal either damage, just raw damage to things, or they have an ability to pump themselves up to make it so that they can do things and deal with creatures or deal with players. But a dragon that can deal with anything that's not a land is super, super rare, and this is just a really nice answer to things. My number 8 is Steel Hellkite. So Steel Hellkite is 6 colorless. It's from Scars of Mirrodin. It's a 5/5 artifact creature dragon with flying. You can pay 2 colorless and pump it. It's got the little fire breathing. It's +1/+0 on a turn. Or you can pay X and destroy each non-land permanent with converted mana cost X whose controller was dealt combat damage by Steel Hellkite this turn. Activate this ability only once each turn. So you can just do this, and then whatever is bothering you, you can hit 3 planeswalkers, artifacts, enchantments, anything you've got that's not a land, this thing deals with. And it's just an amazing answer. It gets out of hand very, very quickly. And again, in EDH, you're probably ramping, and especially if you're on your Soul Ring Signet business, it's not hard to get this thing out very early. Evasion's very important, and even then it's a 5/5 body by itself, but the ability to swoop in and just destroy non-land permanents is so rare among dragons, and very dangerous if it's not dealt with.
And for any deck to use it, like this thing, it's been reprinted a lot. It's in this year's Commander set, it was in last year's Commander set and whatnot, because this thing is just like ridiculous. This thing is also not a very reasonable Magic card. I'm just like, wow, I can't block that card, and I'm just going to lose because
sometimes even sees play in like competitive decks. The Tesserator decks will sometimes have 1 or 2 or sideboard into it. I think shops might even run one in the sideboard and Vintage every now and again.
Nice.
So again, in those colorless decks that have a way to cheat this thing out, it's just a way to deal with whatever ails you. It's very, very, very clean answer to a lot of things.
Yeah, Legacy has been turning into Vintage in that people will just start jamming random 5 and 6 drops in their deck. Yeah. Andrew Cuneo won the GP this past weekend with a Baneslayer Angel in his sideboard of his Miracles deck. For example, because Fatal Push and Abrupt Decay are running around, and those are the most popular ways to try to deal with things. And if you can't bolt or push or decay a Steel Hellkite, that sure is something. For me personally, this was part of the best sealed pool I've ever had in my entire life. I was at the Scars of Mirrodin pre-release, and I opened a pool that had 18 playable artifacts, and I played mono blue with it. Whoa. And I had 2 Trinket Mages and 2 Darksteel Axes and a Wormcoil Engine and a Steel Hellkite, and just like I just could never lose a single game with that deck. It was absurd.
You know who you have to blame for Wormcoil Engine, right?
Who's that?
That's Alexis Jansen right there. That was her baby from start to finish. And she talks about that, like Al Bundy talks about that one football game he won, where she'll be like, you know what, I didn't do anything all day today, but I'm responsible for Wormcoil Engine.
There you go.
That card is insane.
I'm like, Alexis, why?
Why? That was that's one of those like you really? It's just that's one of those
sort of
cards
overshadowed Steel Hellkite as the 6 drop for the set, that's for sure, because looking at what the Steel Hellkite does, like, why does it have the +1/+0 ability? Well, it's because it's a dragon. They wanted to give it, metal breathing or whatever. And so they wanted this to look more like a big splashy thing. Unfortunately, it didn't really get there until,
I think it makes sense. If you don't necessarily care what your opponent has, like you don't want to pour money. It's a mana sink either way. So it's like if you don't want to pour mana into the bomb ability, we'll just make it bigger. Just get in there.
Just with the mana you paid for it, you're already at an 8/5.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine this is one of those very sort of satisfying cards. It's like I hit you and then I count things and go, okay, all those are gone. All right, thanks. Bye-bye.
It's also an excellent addition to the red-black or mono-red or mono-black older or EDH decks or Brawl decks or any of those, or even any deck like that if they are play in older formats that have trouble dealing with artifacts and enchantments. Being able to destroy any non-land permanent means you can get rid of your opponent's Sterling Grove or other cheap enchantments in a deck that normally doesn't have the capacity to do it.
Yeah, so move on here to number 7. I have one. It's awesome. And it's one of the, it's funny to me, like the dragons in Magic, sort of in particular, have just sort of an aura, sort of an essence of importance that other cards don't always get. And in particular, when they make like a really good one that's like very impactful and constructed, has seen a ton of play. Also for my number 7 is a 7-drop, which I appreciate. And one of those also that the luster's kind of worn off. Like these days we get much better rates for what we were like paying a lot for back in the day. It's like the opposite of inflation for Magic. It's weird. That power curve, or power creep rather. Anyway, back in Scourge, they made a bunch of really, really sweet dragons. We've already talked about some of them. And one of them that they made was white, and it was a dragon spirit, and it was awesome. It was called Eternal Dragon.
Nice.
Eternal Dragon is a 2 white, 5 generic mana, 5/5 rare dragon spirit from Scourge. It has flying, of course, but it also has 2 sweet abilities. The first being white, and 3 generic mana. Return Elder Dragon from your graveyard to your hand. You can only do that during your upkeep because Magic cards suck back then. Yep. Also has plane cycling for 2 generic mana. So for 2 generic mana, you can discard it from your hand, search your library for a planes, reveal it, put it in your hand, then shuffle. This was a part of a bunch of cool decks back in the day that dealt with cycling. It also, of course, fixes your mana early. Later in the game, you get to pay that mana to get it back. So it's not like it's the worst rate, particularly, but it's pretty bad. Like these days, it'd be like, whatever, man, just 5 mana, it comes back into play tapped because reasons.
Living End Wishes. Like when I first started playing that deck, I remember going through Gatherer and I was like, let's see if there's any cyclers I'm missing. Is there anything else I can put in this deck? And we were going through Gatherer and I was like, oh. And then I look and it's not modern legal. Yeah, I was like, I would have gnawed off my arm to have had this available.
I think this would be a cool reprint to put into modern. I mean, I don't think it would ruin anything.
No, if anything, it'd just be like, oh, that's a neat, addition to the Living End deck.
Yeah, exactly. Next. A neat shout out. You get to use your old Pro Tour promos. I think there's a Pro Tour promo foil of this deck.
Yeah, it's like $10.
Really? That's hilarious.
And I think it's just because cubes exist and they want the sweetest pimp version.
I mean, I'm pretty sure. So definitely Osip Lebedovic won the Pro Tour with copies of Eternal Dragon in his deck because that was a cycling deck.
The
Astral Slide deck. Mm-hmm. I think that Julian Neuten's World Championship deck was this, but my usual resource for looking up stats is not working right now.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, this definitely has tournament pedigree. Seen a ton of play in block, in standard. Saw a little bit of play in old extended, and then of course when we were talking about some of the old control finishers in the control finishers episode, the Mighty Quinn the Snow Plains based mono white control deck that is not good and has never been good, but was popular for about half a second about 10 years ago, right?
Scrying Sheets was everything.
Scrying Sheets, yeah, exactly. Gaylid Shackles. There were some interesting choices in that deck, but
it's a dark time.
But yeah, Eternal Dragon has had its day in the sun, and it is a great card.
All right, Ruben, what's your number 7?
I am gonna do an Evan Irwin impression and not have any for a little bit.
Oh, cool. That's fine.
I don't have a 7, a 6, or a 5.
We'll see you in the
bums.
top 4. Aaron, what's your number 7?
So one of the nice things about Commander decks and other supplemental products is it gives Wizards a chance to introduce us to characters that we might have only ever been introduced to in flavor text or in the name of cards. And in particular, this character had been, goes all the way back to Mercadian Masks, when specifically there were a series of artifacts named after them. And a lot of people were going, where is this person? You know, the flavor text implies that they are essentially, you know, godlike and that they're responsible for night and day and life and things of that nature. Where's this character? And in Commander 2017, we finally got to meet the character responsible for these artifacts and for all of these great things. My number 7 is Ramos Dragon Engine. So Ramos is 6 colorless legendary artifact creature dragon, a flying with 4/4. Whenever you cast a spell, put a +1/+1 counter on Ramos for each of that spell's colors, and then you can remove 5 +1/+1 counters from Ramos to add 2 blue, 2 white, 2 black, 2 red, and 2 green to your mana pool. You can activate this ability only once each turn. So there was the Tooth of Ramos, the Skull of Ramos, the Horn of Ramos, the Heart of Ramos, the Eye of Ramos. And it says, you know, Ramos wept and there were seas, and Ramos bled and there was fire. Just these really majestic cards. But we'd never met Ramos before. And so this was the first time that we really got to see this character. Shout out to Joseph Meehan for this incredible art. You know, people in Commander love a 5-color deck. They need no excuse to run one. And so rather than having to run something like, you know, Tazri or Progenitus, you can just run this. And sometimes you don't even care what's on the card. You just want carte blanche to run all these colors. But, you know, when you do have Ramos, it opens the door to, it opens the door to nothingness decks and things.
Love it.
Wow.
And so this card was instantly a big hit. I know a lot of people personally who really leapt on the opportunity to build the Ramos deck. And we just finally had a chance to meet this majestic character, and I think the card really lives up to that.
You know, it's a fun fact. You take the eye, the heart, the horn, the skull, and the tooth, and you put them all together, and they did a little spin on the 80s. They called it The Facts of Life. It was a very funny show. They get in sort of hijinks.
Did you know she died?
I heard about that. It's very sad.
Mrs. Garrett died. Oh my god,
that's unfortunate. Ramos Dragon Engine to me is a good example of when like Wizards is like, hey guys, hey, it's Commander, we can do whatever we want. Right. No one cares. Whatever, just counters and stuff, make mana, and it gives a crap because it can be as stupid as it wants for 6 mana. It's never going to hurt anything. It's just going to make Commander players happy. This is those exact type of cards. I love it.
Ramos has been a central figure all the way back to the Brothers' War.
Oh yeah,
being a obviously super powerful ancient dragon, you know, was sort of reprogrammed to be on both sides of the war over the course of the story. Popped back up obviously during Mercadian Masks block, where it's worshipped like a god essentially. I mean, you have the Ramosian people. That's all the rebels are Ramosian people. So yeah, just a really cool callback. Wow. I love that Wizards is doing that these days. I
appreciate them kind of going back and being like, you know that thing that we could have made awesome, but we didn't? Let's make it awesome. And then they totally do, and it's great. I love it. All right, so let's move on here to number 6. Aaron, what is your number 6?
My number 6 is one of my favorite cards. And I would have put this one a little bit higher, but she really hasn't. And yes, she's a big bad dragon. You don't need no beans. She did not see a lot of competitive play, but there's just no other card like this one. The art is unique. The abilities on her are unique and very unusual for dragons in many cases. And she's affectionately named after a candy. My number 6 is Skithiryx, the Blight Dragon. Skittles! Hey. Skittles! Taste the rainbow. So Skithiryx is 3 and 2 black. She's a legendary creature, dragon skeleton. I'm in. I don't even need to know what the rest of the card does. She's 4/4 with flying and infect. An infect dragon. So every time this creature deals damage to creatures in the form of -1/-1 counters and to players in the form of poison counters, you can pay a black and Skittles has haste.
Nice.
Sounds fine. You can also pay 2 black and Regenerator. So typically infect decks are known for playing kind of little pickety creatures. And one of my first standard decks is mono black infect. So I had my little Plaguester, my little Stinger, had like my Ichor Rats, and right, and your opponents are like, this is fine, like just a bunch of 1/1s, okay. And then before you know it, turn 5 is whoop. And if God forbid it's like turn 6, give her haste, and your opponents are like, whoa.
Yeah.
And there's this big flying, infect, hasty, regenerating monstrosity just coming for your face. And if you look at the art, shout out to Chippy. Chippy's another one of the artists we just don't see very much anymore, but you just see this majestic, kind of dead, twisted looking dragon kind of perched out into the moonlight, and you see like the dark forest beneath her, and just gorgeous art, majestic art, but just a very $25, just a $25 card. Why?
It's only been printed once.
Because she's awesome, and she's just very scary, and just the minute she hits the board, it's like, you need to deal with that now.
Where did Chippy go? That's
good question.
I mean, Chippy, he did Lotus Cobra. I mean, you know, like he did Grim Monolith, for God's sake. Like, you know, it's an epic artist, an epic card. This was my number 8 because I recognize how awesome the Blight Dragon is. Like, it basically... It led the excitement around Infect was like, but look at this dragon. It's basically an 8/8 dragon that you can give haste to. It's one of the last times we ever see regenerate matter on any card ever, because they got rid of it shortly thereafter because it's hard to explain. Instead, it would have been like these days. It would have been make it indestructible until end of turn or whatever, right? That would have been the equivalent. But the idea that Skithiryx essentially is sort of leading the show, I'm okay with that. It was the poster child for Infect, and it's great, and I love it.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that that Skithiryx is a member of the 3 hits club of the commander damage, where it takes 3 hits even though it's just a 4/4. You know, mostly those are just the 7/7 haste creatures like Thraxamundar and Karthus. But this is a fun one. I also like the little bit of an anachronism in its type line where it says that Skithiryx, the Blight Dragon, gains haste, but you just regenerate just the Skithiryx part. You don't need
not the rest of it.
She's like, you know who I is. Like, I'm giving you my name.
By the end of this card, you know what's happening.
You know my name by the end of this card.
We're not going to shrink the font any to add my title.
All right, so Ruben, you're still on the higher train, is that right?
Yeah, I'm going to take a nap.
Cool. Well, look, up here next, just outside the top 5, just right there within arm's reach, is a card that doesn't have dragon on the type line. Because
you've turned into me this episode.
No, I haven't. And I'll tell you, first of all,
when I was pulling this crap.
Yeah.
Remember when I was pulling this crap and I was like, oh, I think this is a discard spell. I think this is a control finisher. And you're like, Ruben, that doesn't qualify.
My number 6 is Leviathan, okay? My number 6 is Leviathan because I thought it was a dragon when I was a child. And I was like, that's a cool underwater dragon.
Exactly.
Jesus. My number 5 is sweet because it's a very much integral to the story. It's one of those characters that Wizards has spent a lot of time on to build up really importantly. You know, really interacts much with the villains and whatnot, messes with all heroes, and it's super cool. And it was the second only the second colorless planeswalker. It's Ugin, the spirit dragon.
Jeez Louise.
Ugin. This one you get a pass for. This one almost made my top 10 too.
Now I get more passes. I see how it is. I got a subscription.
Everybody gets 1.
Well, it's 8 generic mana for a 7 loyalty mythic planeswalker Ugin, of course, from Fate Reforged. It has 3 abilities, +2, it deals 3 damage to target creature or player. -X, it exiles each permanent with converted mana cost X or less, that's 1 or more colors. Or -10, you gain 7 life, draw 7 cards, and put up to 7 permanent cards from your hand onto the battlefield, also known as a massive, disgusting beating that it gives to you, and it shows you. And Karn's still basically the play, but every once in a while, I'll see Ugin kind of show up and kind of do some work.
Did you see that Ali Andrazi played in Ugin? He was playing Nickfit in Legacy the other day, and people were like, what is happening here? Exactly. And it's the only card that Modern Dread cares about. Like, if we're facing Tron, we don't care about Karn. We care about Ugin because you can make everything go away. And it's just so scary. You know, it was something the ramp decks were using. I mean, it was even a control card at one point where like it just does whatever you want it to do. It can remove everything, you know, enchantments, artifacts, enchantments, creatures, you know, whatever. And then sometimes it's just a bolt. Sometimes it just bolts you to death. And it's a card that like you need to deal with right away. It's very often just a nail in the coffin when you're already not feeling too good, and then it hits the board and you're like, what am I going to do? Like, how, you know, it's gaining like +2/+3 a turn. How are you going to get around this? It's impossible.
And they $55 a piece right now.
Yeah, look at those. So they had an alternate art promo version. I'm sure those are even more expensive.
Oh my god! I think I mean, last time I saw it was like $200 or $300.
Yeah, they're ridiculous.
Yeah.
I think that this one gets a pass because if Haven of the Spirit Dragon says specifically that you could return any dragon creature card or Ugin Planeswalker card to your graveyard. If Haven of the Spirit Dragon's going to make an exception, I can make an exception too.
Wow, how big of you, Ruben? How giving and thoughtful.
It's literally the least I can do.
Clearly. Number 5, as we move on here, I don't have one, just like Ruben.
Samesies.
Aaron, do you have a number 5?
My number 5 is the only higher on my list.
Oh, wow. We totally dodged number 5 entirely. That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, there's just not that many dragons, and there are even fewer good dragons. It's not like we're gonna have, you know, one of the uncommon morph dragons from Dragons of Tarkir or something like that very high on our lists, I don't think. And the other thing that I noticed when I was building this list is all of the good dragons are members of cycles, which I think that we'll be getting to shortly.
Interesting. Well, we'll get here to my number 4, and I am fairly confident. I'm like 99% confidence on Ruben's hires. This could be Aaron's one hire. I'm not sure. But this is a scary mamma jamma, and it's interesting, you know, because I don't like to focus too much on newer cards because I always feel like, you know, like sort of the cult of the new, if you will. You know, we're very excited because it's the hot new stuff, but if we kind of look back, we're like, it was fine, wasn't that good? But like, this is a card I feel like is going to have that staying power, is going to have sort of the pedigree, and is going to show the world that if you want to have an incredible dragon, it's hard to go wrong with Glorybringer.
Yep.
Glorybringer is just a monster powerhouse of a dragon. I felt absolutely deserved to be in the top 5 because this thing is running our format right now. Like, it is just running it. Everything has to go, well, is Glorybringer going to kill it? Like, okay, that's the thing. Glorybringer is 2 red, 3 generic mana for a 4/4 rare dragon with flying and haste, of course, but you may also exert it as it attacks, and when you do, it deals 4 damage to target non-dragon, aka non-nickel bolus creature an opponent controls, and that's an important point. An exerted creature will not untap during your next untap step, so it tries really hard to burn them to death because this card is amazing. Like,
this is my number 5.
Yes,
my number 5.
I mean, the red mirrors, you know, I remember the last Pro Tour when it came down to, you know, Wyatt Darby and I think it was Gonzalo, I think his name was, and that was sort of the one was on pure mono red, the other was on red black, and it really came down to this and whether or not you wanted to exert it, what you were going to deal with it. And, you know, people love to talk about how, you know, Standard had not been in a great place for a while, and this was one of the cards that people talked about banning, especially in Limited. There were people that were like, what are we going to do? Like, what are options against this card? And I remember seeing several pros, you know, call out this card and say this card is trash, it's just too good. You know, obviously the impact that it's had on Standard, and just a format defining card.
This was my number 5. I don't know if you caught that.
Oh yeah, and
absolutely spectacular. Just everything you want to be doing with the dragon. I have the full art promo in my Brawl deck. Big fan of this card. You know, how can you not be? It does everything.
That's so sick. I mean, like, this is one of those dragons, you know, you're like, whoa, man, I read that, and it's sweet, and it reads sweet, and I bet it's going to play sweet, and it totally plays just as sweet.
Totally plays really well. Yeah.
It's just fan-freaking-tastic, and getting this thing in Limited is a hug from Jesus.
Not fair.
It is not anywhere close to fair. Brings lots and lots of scoops. But that said, Ruben, what's your number 4? Now that you
have a number 4, guys.
Oh my God.
Chevrayim, I have a number 4. And my number 4 is a flag bearer sort of for a cycle of dragons. I decided to leave most of the Dragon Lords off of my list and pick the Dragon Lord that I thought really was the most emblematic. And I think this was the most played. It might have lost to Atarka because Atarka was in a bunch of decks, but Dragon Lord Silumgar has always been the scariest one to me. In any format I ever play it in, it steals my planeswalkers, it steals my creatures, it steals anything and everything.
Also steal your girl. So you know that.
What? Steal your girl. Absolutely. Yeah, Mr. Steelio Bananas also steal passive bananas. So Dragon Lord Silumgar is 4 colorless black, blue for a legendary creature, Elder Dragon. I think that's the first Elder Dragon we've had on the list. Oh no, Nicol Bolas. Never mind. I'm a liar. Anyway. It's a 3/5 with flying and death touch. When Dragon Lord Silumgar enters the battlefield, gain control of target creature or planeswalker for as long as you control Dragon Lord Silumgar. That's quite the ability. Very popular to seal Gideon, ally of Zendikar, and immediately make the +1/+1 emblem.
I did that, yeah.
Yep. Because then even if you died, then you would still have it would still be a 4/6 death toucher.
Right.
Very popular in the Dragon Control Esper Dragons decks, alongside cards like Silumgar's Scorn and Foul Tongue Invocation. This one, along with Dragonlord Ojutai, which we may talk about later, were the most popular dragons in that blue-based dragon sort of control deck. Just a very scary card, huge toughness. Death Touch meant it traded with everything. You got uses out of Planeswalkers. You got to steal opponents' other giant dragons themselves sometimes. And I think that's just an extremely potent, powerful card.
Was also one of the first cards that we saw from Dragons and really highlighted just how different the timeline was. You know, when we left off with Fate Reforged, we got to see, you know, sort of the new cons. We got to see Alesha, we got to see Tasigur, and, you know, nothing really illustrated, you know, Dragons than seeing Tasigur as a necklace around Silumgar's neck. Like, that really kind of reminded us just how much the Dragons had taken over, to the point where they were wearing the other cons, you know, where Silumgar's wearing him around his neck, you know, and so that was really like, you're really not in Kansas anymore.
I mean, how BA can you get when you're wearing your foe on your neck? Like, yeah, I don't care. It can stink. Shut up. Deal with it. Yeah.
That is quite the opulent message to send. Is I'm wearing my enemies. That's the equivalent of
with the outfits.
Right. That's like the equivalent of making a bowl or a goblet out of your opponent's skull and drinking out of it. Yeah.
Which is ironic, considering, you know, Tasigur is eating the fruit and being Sultai, I would imagine the bowl was the remnants of something.
Nice. There you go. Well, that's recycled. That's, you know.
Yeah. Hey, I'm a recycler myself. You know. Just...
Black and green are two of the three colors in the Sultai Guild. So
it's true.
Sultai, yeah.
Aaron, what's your number 4?
One of the really common phrases that we hear around preview time is dies to Doomblade. You know, you see a really, really sweet creature and it's like, oh, that's nice, dies to Doomblade, or dies to Grasp of Darkness, or dies to Ruinous Path, or whatever. There's always that one person that likes to rain on your parade by telling you that. And even though that might be true, sometimes it's really nice to just have a bit of an insurance policy where, you know, even if that may be the case, you know, you still have a way to get something out of the transaction where, yeah, you may kill this thing, but I'm going to get something out of this. And so my number 4 was a really neat kind of insurance policy for a set like Dragons of Tarkir, for a block like Khan's block, where it was obvious that you're going to be playing lots of dragons, but sometimes you didn't matter if they died because you got something out of the deal, and if it meant that you were able to kill them in the process, all the better. But number 4 is Thunderbreak Regent. So Thunderbreak Regent is 2 and 2 red. It's a creature type dragon, 4/4 flying. Whenever a dragon you control becomes the target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, Thunderbreak Regent deals 3 damage to that player. These sort of gruel dragon decks were very, very fast. And so, you know, a lot of times you had your back up against the wall and finally you draw that Grasp of Darkness and you're like, I'm at 3. You know, the games are just over so quickly where it's like, yeah, you finally got your kill spell, but it doesn't matter because this ability is going to happen and you're going to die. And so this was a really nice way to protect those dragons. You know, there was a lot of talk of obviously the named dragons, like the Dragon Lords, but this was a very nice kind of backup singer, you know, in that band, in that deck. And so if you're playing any kind of dragons deck, you know, Mardu Dragons was a thing. There was a Mardu deck for a while, or even if you just weren't running a lot of dragons, like even if you just wanted to protect this was something you could do. And so in the Mardu decks, this was a thing. In the Gruul decks, this was a thing. It was just a very, very powerful card that definitely changed the way that these decks played.
Yeah, this is the Ringo. You know, it's cool. It's not the front facing. It's not the ones that get all the fans, but it does all the work. And songs wouldn't work if it wasn't there.
And even without the claw, still a 4/4 flying for 4 with really no drawback. Like if you go back and look at Gather, look at the things they used to make you do for that. Like there was always like discard your hand, or like you have to have an artifact or something. No, just that's fine. Like that alone is fine. And if God forbid you have 2.
No, it's all upside. Let's be clear. It's all the upside. There's no downside.
Speaking of Ringo, this was my number 9.
Nice.
9. Little flashback there. Yeah, even without the claws, it still got the teeth. Yeah. Thunderbreak Regent is a hell of a Magic card. I played tons of that dragon-centric deck, and Thunderbreak Regent was the glue that held it all together. It was the foundation upon which you built the red-black Kolagon Storm's Fury decks, or even the sort of red-blue Grixis kind of control-y dragon decks. In addition to just being a cube all-star, one of the few dragons that's in the cube, one of the few red creatures at 4 that doesn't have haste that is deserving of a spot in the cube as well.
Nice. Well, there you go. So moving on here to number 3. I don't have one. However, I'm going to call my shot, and I'm going to say this is Ruben's number 2.
Okay.
Because this is a sweet one, but we'll see if it actually ends up that way. Ruben, do you have a number 3?
I do, and I share it with Aaron this time.
Whoa.
No more Evan Rubin sharesies.
Wow.
We're dunesies.
Gosh.
We're on the same cycle for number 3.
Yeah, this was a card. I remember when this card was previewed, and this card had very big shoes to fill, which I'm sure we'll talk about in our top 2 or remaining top 3. But I remember this card initially landing with a whimper. Initially, people were like, why? Like, why would I want this? Like, why would I want this particular color of protection? What does the ability do? Like, this is a lot of work, you guys. Like, I don't know.
This ability is ridiculous and expensive. Why? How am I ever going to be spending mana on any of this?
Cut to it being, a defining sort of the red dragon of that format. We talked about how Glorybringer is defining our standard. This was the dragon du jour of that particular standard, Theros standard. There happened to be a lot of white answers in the format at the time, and so it ended up having protection from white was very, very noteworthy. And this card ended up being good enough to even see play in older formats. Sometimes there's the weird ramp decks. Sometimes the mono red prison decks would pick this up and have a really good time. Our number 3 is Stormbreath Dragon.
Yeah.
You want to tell them what it does?
Sure. Stormbreath Dragon's 3 colorless red for a mythic dragon from Theros. It has flying, haste, and protection from white. And it has Monstrosity 3 that costs 5 colorless red to do. So if this creature isn't monstrous, put 3+1/+1 counters on it and it becomes monstrous. When Stormbreath Dragon becomes monstrous, it deals damage to each opponent equal to the number of cards in that player's hand. From what I understand, this ability was designed to be the anti-Sphinx's Revelation ability, to be able to sort of mitigate Sphinx's Revelation's effectiveness against big red finishers in the control decks. Obviously, having protection from white meant it also had protection from Azorius Charm and from lots of other stuff like that. This is the most played dragon stats-wise thus far in the history of Magic in terms of high-level finishes, Grand Prix, Pro Tours, etc. And it's still going. It still sees some play in Modern. Our buddy Chris Van Meter is a huge fan of the Stormbreath Dragon. He is the leader of the Stormbeard Dragons. If you know, go check out CVM's stuff. And yeah, it's just a terrifyingly scary card. Definitely had some big shoes to fill, but I think did it.
Yeah, Grill Monsters was a thing. So you were playing things like Nykthos, you were playing Voyaging Satyr, and so it was not difficult to get the mana to not only get it out, but it was not difficult to get the mana to Monstrosity. And this was another card that you had to deal with right away. And I will never forget just the initial reaction of people just like, this is hard. Like, I don't know. And then I just remember slowly but surely it putting up results, and then eventually it being a tier 1 deck. And this was the reason why.
Yeah, I absolutely recall it was like, this is our mythic? This is our big scary creature? Like, it's just a 4/4/5 mana that does freaking everything.
It does everything, yeah.
It does a lot.
Anytime a card doesn't have flavor text because there's too much other stuff it does, it's either total garbage or it has potential. That happened with, I think that happened with Huntmaster of the Fells. They were like, well, like right at the beginning, they're like, well, I'm not sure that this is exactly, but it's got the most words that's ever been printed on a Magic card, so let's see if it works.
Turns out.
And the same deal with Stormbreath Dragon.
And didn't Chris Van Meter like get famously blown out by Stormbreath? Is that right? Like, I recall him playing with it and against it in some crazy blowout fashion.
So the famous blowout for Chris Van Meter was from a card called Dictate of the Twin Gods.
Oh yeah,
where he attacked his opponent down to 2 or something, and his opponent went end step Dictate of the Twin Gods, untap Spark Trooper Lightning Strike you to deal lethal damage. Yeah.
Wow, those was the days right there. All right, so let's see here. Mine's higher. You guys is the same. We get to the top 2. Oh man, this is fun.
I got a lot of holes left in my list.
Oh boy.
Still.
Clearly. Ruben, what's your number 2?
My number 2 is higher on someone else's list.
Wow. 5 hires and 2 sames.
1 same.
Technically higher / same with Glorybringer.
Oh, okay, sure.
You added number 5.
Yeah,
number 5.
Because you added it 4, and Aaron had it at 5 with me. All right, fair enough.
Okay, Aaron, what's your number 2?
So I came back to Magic around Innistrad. I took about 10 years off from the game, and so there were a lot of things that I missed. And I came back for Innistrad. I got to play the tail end of like new Phyrexia Standard, and then I had the pleasure of playing an Innistrad Return to Ravnica Standard, which is still my favorite standard of all time. I had the most fun playing that. And so this was the first time that I really got to experience what we've talked about throughout the show as sort of being the red dragon du jour in Standard. I feel like every Standard I've had the pleasure of participating in has had that, whether it's Glorybringer for this current Standard, before that it was another dragon, we had Stormbreath Dragon. And for me, this was the first one. This was the first one that I got to see. These are the shoes that Stormbreath Dragon had to fill. But this was the card that I remember being the scary, dragon of Innistrad Standard. And, I also found out later on that the ability was no accident, that it was made specifically to deal with Lingering Souls, because R&D was expecting Lingering Souls to really take off. And so this was a way to sort of get around that and give these decks a chance to get through all those blockers. Just an amazing powerhouse of a card. Another one of those cards you just have to deal with. And for me, at least, has set the tone for Standard. My number 2 is Thundermaw Hellkite. Thundermaw Hellkite is 3 and 2 red. It's a creature dragon, 5/5 flying with haste. When Thundermaw Hellkite enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to each creature with flying your opponent's control. Tap those creatures. And so if you have any flyers in your way, just get rid of it. I'm getting in there no matter what. This was a card that the mid-range decks played. This is a card that the control decks even played. Sometimes you see like 4 Augur Bolus, a couple Snapcasters of this. That's fine. It was just a very versatile card that multiple decks could use. And for me, at least, was the first time that I really got to see, the red dragon du jour, where Thundermaw was there, then it rotated, and we got Stormbreath out, and now we got this other thing. And so this is the one that really started it all for me, and a lot of fun memories of being on the other side of this card and being like, uh-oh, what am I going to do?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the cards that, was absolutely designed to stop Lingering Souls from being Lingering Souls, because they knew that was the best card in the set for Dark Ascension. If I recall, M13 came out after Dark Ascension, so that you had essentially that time period where, correct. And this was great by Wizards, like they had that time period where like Lingering Souls got to go absolutely bananas, and then they're like, okay.
And then they started printing answers, yeah.
And then the Fun Police showed up, and it was like,
remember the days when Wizards printed answers?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, when Return to Ravnica came out, or maybe it was Guild Gate Crash, where it was like every card was a direct answer to Lingering Souls, every single one, like Gruul Charm and Golgari Charm, and there was just another like Zealous Persecution style card, and yeah, this was my number 7, by the way.
Nice.
Thundermaw Hellkite, another one of the very few dragons to make its way into the modern format. Willie Adel, one of our favorites here on the show, won a modern Grand Prix with a very innovative form of what else? Jund at Grand Prix Toronto in 2012. Absolutely. With things like Lotus Cobra ramping into Thundermaw Hellkites. Nice. back when Lingering Souls was the powerhouse in Modern as well. And it's been a part of not just, it doesn't need to be the focus. For example, Red Black Zombies used to run Thundermaw Hellkite as a top end. Tyler Lytle won Grand Prix San Antonio in that standard format with Thundermaw Hellkite as sort of the innovative factor of that deck, just going super big on top of what was traditionally a relatively low to the ground deck. When you see a turn 1 Gravecrawler, you don't necessarily expect a turn 5 Thundermaw Hellkite. Just an extremely potent, powerful dragon, and well-deserving of discussion in this list.
Lingering Souls being so good that Jund even adopted it, and then there was that weird freak version called a Jundi, where it was like, girl, like that was when the metagame was like 50% Jund, and like they were so desperate to get that leg up in the mirror that they were like, all right, we'll run this and like in a Johnny Vengeance and call it a day, and it was like.
Wow. I mean, and as I recall, this is a Zach Hill creation. And yeah, this is just one of those ways of like, well, how do you do it? Well, and I love my favorite line on this card is tap those creatures. Like, no matter what, you're going to smash in for 5. Deal with it. That's fantastic. All right, so my number 2 is part of a cycle, and it's not necessarily. Like it's right up there, like it's like 1 and 2 for this cycle for me, or just right here. And I was like, I couldn't choose between the kids, but I was like, well, at least if I'm going to choose between them, might as well say this one got a little bit more sort of hype. This one got a little bit more love. This guy saw a lot more play than the other one, and I'm fine with that. It's okay because I did not choose Yosei. Instead, I chose Kakusho.
I was gonna pick this.
Kakusho, the Evening Star, is 2 black, 4 generic mana for a 5/5 legendary dragon spirit. It has flying, and whenever it dies, each opponent loses 5 life, and you gain life equal to the life lost this way. I have played decks where I won boxes of Magic the Gathering playing 4 of this card and 4 Yoseis in a stupid black-white control deck, and it was beautiful, and it was great, and I loved it. And this is just one of those iconic cards, and Wizards, has no idea what they're doing when it comes to printing it, because it was rare and then it was mythic and then it was rare again because Iconic Masters needed to suck some more.
Right.
And yeah, so like Kokusho itself, just an epic card from one of my favorite sets, from the set that I really kind of dove into when I got back into Magic. And God, that original artwork is just so beautiful, and I love Kamigawa, and the Japanese themes and stuff are great. And it's hard to not see that, like, everybody loses 5 life and you gain all life in multicolor games, or multiplayer games rather. There's a reason this thing is still like $7 to $10 depending on which version you want.
Oh, it was more. Yeah, thank God for the reprints though, because I remember before that I was thinking of building a Shirei deck. Or no, I have my Shirei deck. I was thinking of building the warping whale, or the one where you target something and it dies.
Hirobi?
Hirobi, yes, thank you. I wanted to build a Hirobi deck, and the Hirobi deck was really, really affordable, except it had a Kokusho. And I remember looking at it, and I was like, why is this a $15, $20 card? I was like, I don't understand. And people were like, because it's the truth. And then when it came out, I remember everybody was poo-pooing it because it was Iconic Masters. And the only thing I was thinking of was, sweet, I can finally afford a Kokusho now. And now it's like $5 or $6.
Yeah, it really tanked the value putting that thing back at rare, because when it was mythic at Modern Masters, again, it was like, wow, it was like $40, $50 or whatever. It was ridiculous. Right. And nowadays they've crashed that value straight down.
Nirkana Revenant was another one that was like $20+ and I was like, why?
Right. Just every once in a while you're like, what is the Cryptgast? Why is this $1 billion? I had Kokusho at my number 6. Again, nice. Same issue I had with Evan, where I was like, do I pick the Cube All-Star of Kiga, the Tide Star? Do I pick the one that has the I think Yosei saw slightly more play, but they saw play in the same decks, and they also both won a Pro Tour. I forget which Pro Tour, but that deck won a Pro Tour. Either that or the old Solar Flare style decks, right when those became popular.
Right.
Kokusho is just super iconic. The new art is also gorgeous. And yeah, Kokusho I think is and that whole cycle of the legendary Spirit Dragons. Really deserving of a
so moment. I just want to recap. It's interesting that you both put the emphasis in different places. Like one of you says Kokusho, and then the other says Kokusho.
Kokusho.
I love it.
Yeah, I don't know.
Kokusho. Kokusho. Like what?
It means something different depending on where you put the emphasis.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
right syllable. Got it.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on here to our number 1. Interesting. I have deduced Aaron's number 1, and Ruben and I share number 1, and it's fun.
No.
What?
No.
I share mine with somebody.
Ruben?
I don't share a number 1 with anybody.
Oh my goodness, that's crazy. Aaron and I never share anything. That's great, because this is the dragon. Ruben, this is
my number 2.
It's the dragon, man. It's the one. It's the one that was worth
2.
more than Black Lotus back in the day for a very small amount of time, because nothing was bigger, nothing was better. It's one of the most iconic artworks that exist in the game. It's one of like the creatures you're just like, what's a dragon? You're like, here's a dragon. Shivan Dragon is the dragon.
Yep.
Aaron, what does it do?
So it is 4 and 2 red. It goes all the way back to alpha. It's a creature type dragon, summon dragon for our old school friends out there with the summons. It's a 5/5 with flying, and you can simply pay red and +1/+0 until end of turn. I'm still friends with the girl who got me to play Magic all those years ago back in 7th grade, Miss Hilmer's science class. I'm still friends with my friend Samantha Lemieux. I'll never forget, we went to a core set pre-release. I think it was like M13 or something. And this had been downgraded to like an uncommon. And I remember there being a bunch of kids that were like, ew, we opened Shivan Dragon. This is trash. And she looked at me and out to her, and we were like, listen, little bastards. Like this, you don't know where you've been. You don't know where you come from. This is everything. Like, how dare you? It's, I remember just us being kind of the grizzled veterans, thinking of this card and revering it in such a way as being the OG dragon. This was a rare back in alpha, and that original iconic art from Melissa Benson of sort of that the underbelly view of the dragon, and really seeing how big it is against that starry night. And just seeing these new kids nowadays that just don't appreciate it. It's like an uncommon now, and it's something that people leave on their tables at Grand Prix when they open it. And how far the mighty have fallen, but this really was the one that started it all. Like Evan said, this is the one that when you think dragon, you think of the claws being open, coming at you. The art is just something we will never see again in this sort of style of dragon. This really set the tone for the Glory Bringers, for the Thunderbreak regions, for the Stormbreath Dragons. We wouldn't have any of them if it weren't for the Shivan Dragon.
I mean, this set the tone for the game. You know, this, like, what does Magic look like? What artwork are you going to promote? As far as I know, it's not been an uncommon, but I haven't looked very far. The point is they basically give it away these days. It's like part of the, like, you know, welcome deck, core set, whatever. Here, just have a Shivan Dragon.
How much do you think the alpha goes for?
$1,300.
Nope.
Oh, I'm looking at it right here. It's not $1,300.
Alpha, I'm showing $3,400.
$3,400.
Wow.
That
could be based on different websites, but the one I'm looking at says $34.99.99.
Okay,
and that ain't $1 and then a couple cents, penny. That's $3,499.99.
Well, that's fair. The price here is out of stock, which is why the out of stock prices on Magic cards are always weird. Yeah, but again, Shivan Dragon to me is just like, you know, like, Evan, what's a dragon in Magic? And I'm like, hold on.
Yeah.
Shivan Dragon. Like, that's the one I want to show off. But that's really interesting. But Ruben, what's your number one?
You know, I struggled with this a little bit. And I honestly thought that you'd have this on your list, seeing as...
Oh, it is. It's my last hire.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay. Where is it on your list?
3.
3. Okay, that makes sense. Because when the Magic Show started, one of the very first things that the Magic Show did was try to design a deck.
What could this be? I have no idea.
Using 4 of this card.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that it is important. If you're a number 1 on a list, you got to be in From the Vault Dragons. You got to be that iconic. And we did it with both Shivan Dragon and my card. Mm-hmm. And Form of the Dragon is also in From the Vault Dragon. So you're clean on that. As is the spell Dragonstorm. That's right. Is in From the Vault Dragon. And what do you go get with your many, many copies of Dragonstorm other than Bogardan Hellkite?
Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah. So wow. Bogardan Hellkite is a 5/5 for 6 colorless red. Mm-hmm. It has flash and it has flying. It was originally in Time Spiral. It's been reprinted a number of times. Mm-hmm. And when it enters the battlefield, it deals 5 damage, divided as you choose among any number of targets. Dragonstorm was the most dominant combo deck in its era. And it's one of maybe the top 3 most powerful combo decks of Standards past. 2 different copies of it made it to the finals of Worlds. One of the most famous matches in Magic history between Patrick Chapin and Gabriel Nassif was a Dragonstorm mirror match. So many people won tournaments, Grand Prix. I don't know I think it did win a Pro Tour, but I would need to be fact checked on that. But it is, you know, the red-blue version that was sort of popularized by the Japanese, and then later the Spine Rock Null version, which was sort of stumbled upon and built by those luminaries of Magic like Gabriel Nassif and Dave Williams and Bob Marr and Patrick Chapin, that they all played at that Worlds. That was a massive, massive deal, and I have so many stories having to do with Bogardan Hellkite. I don't want to waste everybody's time, but I'll tell just one. I lent my Bogardan Hellkites to Bob Marr and Dave Williams for that Worlds. And they were the 2 other people who were playing that deck. Me and my buddy Brian Toon were in the basement of Neutral Ground, and we're just hanging out, and we were drafting. I think Evan was in this draft, and we look over our shoulder, and we're like, is that Dave Williams? Because I didn't know him yet. This is how I met Dave. Mm-hmm. This guy that I've now known for over a decade. And they were like, yeah, we're picking up some cards for the tournament tomorrow. And I was like, and we both had like what we called Ghetto Storm, which was like an Empty the Warrens style Storm deck. But we had Spine Rock Nulls, and we had all the, you know, Rite of Flame kind of stuff, or not Rite of Flame, but Rift Bolts and all the things that they were picking up last second, and also Bogardan Hellkites. And so we were able to lend those to those guys for that tournament. So.
Man, that was some crazy stuff way back in the day.
Yeah.
Bogardan Hellkite, just in and of itself, is an incredible thing, and it's one of those that, honestly, I do believe it led to me just getting to know and being friends with Pat Chapin, because he was like, dude, you found Dragonstorm. He's like, yeah. I don't know how you did. You found, I was like, that was like the spark of creativity that no one else had at the time, because I was like, wow, this card seems stupid, and these 2 cards are insta-wins, and I was like playing around with Urza lands and stuff, and it was silly, but the idea was sound. Decks. I know, right? Oh. It was fun.
Those early episodes, like episode 5 of the magic show. He was
super.
like, yeah, we got these. I mean, we found Rite of Flame and Seething Song. Let's also play Signets or whatever.
Sure. Just give me some mana. Let's make it happen. I mean, it's a hell of a card. And those are some awesome dragons, let me tell you. Those were our top 10 dragons. You will see them on the screen right now for your review. Take a look at my list, Aaron's list, Ruben's top 10, and we want to hear from you about what card we did not talk about. And we'll select our favorite to win a $50 gift certificate to CoolStuffInc.com. But before we go, I want to thank my co-host. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Ruben.
Thank you.
And we're going to move on here to our final slide. All right. So I want to thank our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, our co-sponsor, CardHoarder.com, my co-hosts, Aaron Campbell and Ruben Bressler. You guys for watching or listening, and hope you support us at Patreon.com/MagicMikes. Please follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe to everything social that tells people we exist. Catch us online at Twitch.tv at Magic Mikes, on Twitter at Magic Mikes Cast, our Magic Mikes subreddit, and like the Magic Mikes page on Facebook. Talk to us privately at MagicMikesPodcast@gmail.com. Follow the audio-only podcast at MagicMikesPodcast.libsyn.com, or find us on iTunes, or join us here next week, same time, same place, for another episode of Magic Mikes. Good night, everybody.